During the wedding reception, the microphone was handed to Mayor Peterson, the FIL of my younger brother, Dave.
I'm extremely happy that my beloved daughter is marrying a dependable man.
Mayor Peterson began with such words, but his expression didn't seem bright at all. As I was wondering about it, the topic suddenly shifted to me.
I suppose everyone will find out eventually, so I'll tell you now. It's about Dave's older brother. He's a high school graduate.
With Mayor Peterson's sudden declaration, the atmosphere in the hall changed dramatically. People started glancing my way, and their stares stung.
You all must be wondering if it's okay to become relatives with such a man. I feel the same way. A high school graduate is a disgrace to the family.
His words, spoken through the microphone, echoed in my mind. I had been mocked about my educational background before, but this was the first time I had been humiliated in front of so many people. Moreover, this rejection was coming from someone who was about to become my relative. I wanted to leave the venue as soon as possible. I wanted to hide where no one could see me. However, it wouldn't be acceptable for the main family member of the wedding to disappear midway. As I was hanging my head, I noticed some commotion in the front. When I looked up, Dave had stood up and taken the microphone from Mayor Peterson. Just then, Mayor Peterson's body began to tremble. My name is Mark Walker. I'm in my 30s and work in a local construction business. It's a well-known company locally, and I hold a respectable position, so I often receive envy from others. However, I was never particularly outstanding from the start. Rather, I managed to climb up here despite growing up in a less fortunate environment. That's because I grew up in a single-parent family, and we lived a pared-down life, which was not conducive to focusing on studies. During my elementary school days, I lived with my mother and younger brother, Dave. Our mother worked from morning till night. Therefore, in the mornings, we would get ready ourselves, use after-school care, and then return home. To stave off hunger, we would nibble on small pieces of bread, or when there wasn't even that much food available, we'd distract ourselves with whatever play we could find to manage our hunger. I was neither good at studies nor sports, and I wasn't the kind of elementary student who had a dream for the future. But Dave was different. He excelled academically and was also good at sports. He always performed well in sports festivals, and he was always top of his class in marathon competitions.
I want to become a police officer and make our community a safe place.
I felt proud of my brother as he presented in front of the entire school. As we became high school students, as the years progressed, we inevitably came to a time when we had to realistically consider our futures. Unlike Dave, who continued to dream of becoming a police officer, I aimlessly went through school life without any particular ambition.
It's time you got serious and decided on a career path. What are you planning to do?
Called out by my teacher to think about my future, I realized I had no specific desires and could not let my single mother bear the burden of tuition and living expenses alone. Thus, it was inevitable that I would work and earn money after graduating from high school.
Why don't you try going to college?
Ignoring the strong advice of my teacher to continue schooling, I started working at my current company as soon as I graduated from high school. Having lived such a boyhood, we became adults. Dave, fulfilling his dream of becoming a police officer, was busy with his work. Although we were a close family, Working made it hard to find time to meet and discuss each other's recent status. One day, I was surprised to receive a call from Dave after a long time. He was getting married. What surprised me even more was that Dave's fiancée was Mayor Peterson's daughter, Mary. Dave had met Mary through an introduction and was unaware at the time that she was the mayor's daughter. He was astonished to find Mayor Peterson waiting when he went to report their marriage. Dave had met Mayor Peterson several times as part of his police duties, but he had never thought he would become related to the mayor, so he felt more determined as he told me,
"Mark, I know you're busy, but I'm supposed to introduce my family soon, so can you make time? Mom came for a meeting recently, but I need to introduce you too."
Of course, I owe Mayor Peterson for his help with work, so I need to make a good impression. Saying that, I hung up and looked forward to the day of the meeting. The day to meet Mary and Mayor Peterson arrived quickly. Since I usually only wore work clothes or cheap casual suits, I bought a new suit for the occasion. While feeling somewhat unlike myself, I waited at the restaurant for Mayor Peterson and his daughter, Mary.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I look forward to today.
Mayor Peterson, a familiar figure from the neighborhood newsletter and local news, entered the private room together with Mary. Dave and I stood up to greet them. "Thank you for having us. I'm Mark, Dave's older brother. Nice to meet you." As I introduced myself, Mary returned the greeting with a smile. She seemed like a very pleasant person, and her demeanor reflected her good upbringing. Mayor Peterson appeared different than how he seemed on TV. On TV, he was amiable, communicating well with the townspeople, and receiving good responses, but since entering the room, he had his arms crossed. Even while waiting for drinks, he remained silent, not uttering a single word. Feeling concerned about Mayor Peterson's demeanor, I initiated conversation. "Thank you for making time in your busy schedule, Mayor Peterson." As the bottled beer and glasses were served, I spoke up while pouring drinks. Then Mayor Peterson looked at me sternly and said in a cold voice,
I was intending this to be private time. Please refrain from calling me mayor today.
Taken aback by his tone, I quickly apologized. Certainly, being a mayor in this small town, he must always put on a good face and hardly has a moment of peace. Being recognized everywhere and unable to act carelessly might be somewhat like being a celebrity. Understanding this, I felt I could empathize with Mayor Peterson's feelings. "I apologize for making you uncomfortable. I lacked consideration." Mayor Peterson snorted and took a swig of his beer provocatively. The dinner started on an awkward note, but being a famous high-end place, the food was delicious, and both Dave and Mary helped keep the conversation going smoothly. The atmosphere became awkward again when Mary asked me,
Could you tell us more about yourself, Mark?
I'm very interested in your past too. Which university did you graduate from?
Mayor Peterson asked with a deep frown, making it hard for me to meet his eyes. Talking about my educational background is something I struggle with the most. It had hardly ever come up since I was in my 30s, but being asked about it still made me uneasy. I tried to respond confidently to Mayor Peterson's question. Actually, I started working right after graduating from high school to help my mother, who was always working. Working in construction isn't easy, but I managed to earn enough to give my mother some relief. Given those circumstances, I didn't even attend college, let alone graduate. Fearing my response sounded like an excuse, my tone faltered midway. I have lived my life as best I could, and I have no regrets about my life. But if asked whether I have something to boast about, I don't. My timid demeanor must have been apparent to Mayor Peterson. Looking down on me, he scoffed and said,
I had heard as a joke that you were a high school graduate, but I didn't think it was true. You've probably lived a cowering life without much effort. Or perhaps you're expecting financial support from us now.
Stunned by his harsh words, I was at a loss for words. While it may not be a praiseworthy background, I'm not living in a cowering manner, nor do I intend to rely on anyone. On the contrary, I'm tasked with managing construction sites and am involved in significant projects for the town at my current job. Mary seemed to feel the discomfort too and spoke out against Mayor Peterson.
Dad, isn't that a bit much? Besides, Mark has been fulfilling his duties in society, and focusing on educational background is an outdated way of thinking.
Although Dave did not nod in agreement, his expression clearly showed he agreed with Mary's farts. Mayor Peterson, not looking convinced, then spoke to Mary.
Keep quiet, you.
Then he faced me again.
As you know, I am the mayor of this town. While people will be happy about my daughter getting married, they do care about who she marries. There will always be those who start digging into the other party's family background.
I understand what Mayor Peterson means. Thinking about the people around me, if someone gets married in such a small town, rumors and gossip will quickly spread. If it involves the mayor's daughter, one can only imagine how much scrutiny there will be. Finding out that a close relative dropped out of high school would certainly not sit well with Mayor Peterson. The more I talked, the more pathetic I felt about myself. In that moment, Mayor Peterson threw an unbelievable comment my way.
Dave is the man my daughter loved, and being a police officer is certainly trustworthy. But what about you?
Mayor Peterson sighed and continued with a look of disgust.
Frankly, even if Dave becomes a relative, I would like to cut ties with you. Do you understand?
I wanted to think it was a bad joke, but Mayor Peterson was looking at me very seriously. It seemed like an unimaginable statement to Mary too, as she was just flustered and couldn't find the words to respond. It was Dave who objected.
William, if I may speak, I wouldn't have been able to graduate from high school and police academy without Mark's help. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have this job.
With passionate expression, Dave continued to explain. Dave explained in more detail how I, having started working right after high school to ease our hard-working mother's burden, covered his tuition and other expenses. In reality, I hardly ever spent the money I earned on myself, my style, or things I wanted. When Dave became a high school student and joined clubs, leaving no time for part-time jobs, I earned money for his tuition and allowance. Even when he said he needed workbooks for college entrance exams, I managed to come up with the money. If he had something he wanted to learn or do, I was prepared to provide any amount of money, so none of these were a pain for me. Rather, I felt proud of Dave for accomplishing things I could never do myself, like achieving good results in mock exams and receiving awards in club activities. Dave's efforts paid off, and he was accepted into a prestigious private university. Our mother praised Dave's efforts and was pleased, yet she was worried about whether she could manage the expenses for his living and tuition on her own. "Mom, don't worry about the tuition for Dave. I'll handle it," Aren't you working a bit too much?
Thank you, I'm happy, but you've been working hard and not spending anything on yourself. Don't worry about me.
For the sake of our hard-working mother, and to support what Dave wanted to do, I worked even harder. In university, Dave was dedicated to his research, having given up on becoming a police officer, but something made him start saying again that he wanted to become one. I thought about what kind of job would suit him, but being a police officer seemed perfect for someone as Dave. Let me handle the tuition for the police academy. You don't need to worry about anything, Dave, just focus on your dream. When I told Dave that, he smiled and reassured me.
The police academy teaches knowledge and skills, and I'll receive grants, so there's no need to worry about money.
Dave, who had been smiling, suddenly became serious and faced me.
Thank you for letting me do as I pleased all this time. I'll be independent from now on and can ease Mom's burden too. Please, start spending money on yourself.
I can remember Dave's tearful expression as if it was yesterday. That's the past we had, but Dave explained to Mayor Peterson how much he had relied on me and how selflessly I had dedicated myself to him. I felt embarrassed listening to him, but it seemed like Mary was looking at me with respect after hearing Dave's story.
Well, in the end, you were just a young man without aspirations or ambitions.
After saying that, Mayor Peterson stood up and put on his jacket.
Staying any longer would just spoil the food and drink. I'll be leaving first.
What are you talking about?
Mary tried to stop him, but Mayor Peterson left the room without paying any attention.
I'm sorry for his rudeness.
All I could do was give a wry smile as Mary repeatedly apologized. The day of the dinner left me uneasy about what would happen next, but according to Dave, Mayor Peterson is not usually like that. Maybe he was just being overly sensitive about his daughter getting married and the family relations involved. Mary also said,
That was the first time I've seen my father like that.
It seems there would be no particular problems if I weren't there. Dave and Mary's relationship remained good, and the wedding venue arrangements went smoothly, with no issues in setting the wedding date. Finally, the day of Dave and Mary's wedding arrived. Blessed by many, Dave and Mary pledged their eternal love. Moved by the scene, I couldn't help but shed tears. As we moved to the reception, still immersed in the moment, the microphone was handed to Mayor Peterson during the ceremony. Following a message from Mary to her parents, Mayor Peterson stood up with a troubled face.
I am extremely happy that my beloved daughter is marrying Dave, a reliable man.
Mayor Peterson began with such words, but his expression didn't seem to clear up at all. As I was puzzled by this, the conversation suddenly shifted to me.
Everyone will find out eventually, so I'll tell you now. It's about Dave's older brother. He's a high school graduate.
With Mayor Peterson's sudden statement, the atmosphere in the room changed dramatically. People glanced at me, and their stares stung.
You all might be wondering if it's okay to become relatives with such a family. I feel the same. A high school graduate is a disgrace to the family.
Mayor Peterson's words, spoken through the microphone, echoed in my mind. I had been teased about my educational background many times before, but being humiliated in front of such a large crowd was a first. Moreover, this rejection was coming from someone who was about to become my relative. The pain was sharper than any prejudice I had faced before because of my education. I wanted to leave the venue quickly. I wanted to hide where no one could see me. However, it wouldn't be acceptable for a key family member of the wedding to just disappear. As I was looking down, I noticed some commotion in the front. When I looked up, Dave had stood up and taken the microphone from Mayor Peterson.
I understand your feelings, William.
Dave said, then slowly looked around the entire hall.
To me, Mark is a great brother worthy of respect, high school graduate or not. My brother, involved in the town's tourism development project and the renewable energy power plant construction project, is the star of this town.
Beside Dave, I could hear Mayor Peterson muttering,
Mark Walker.
There were construction and municipal office people in the hall.
That's Mark Walker's younger brother.
I could hear whispers of conversation. Mayor Peterson, of course, should have reviewed the documents concerning the projects planned within the town and the contractors and leaders involved. Perhaps something clicked for him because he suddenly turned pale and began to tremble. As Dave said, I had been selected as a member of 2 significant projects being considered for the town. The town's declining population, economic stagnation, and energy issues were urgent challenges, and without intervention, our hometown faced a future of mergers or absorption. To protect our hometown, we needed to implement some fundamental reforms. While we weren't neglecting child-rearing policies, they might not fit perfectly, and it would take years before increased numbers of children could work and pay taxes. By that time, the town might not be functioning, and it's quite conceivable that the children would move to the city in search of jobs. That's why, alongside promoting child-rearing, economic development of the town is being pursued. The core of this is attracting tourists with projects and developing infrastructure using natural energy. Creating attractive tourist spots in the town could bring in visitors from outside the county who would spend money and help the economy, and they might even consider moving here if they liked it. The power plant construction project still needed detailed discussions, but if we could successfully produce renewable energy from this land, it could alleviate the townspeople's suffering from rising energy prices and energize the town by creating jobs. Utilizing unused land could make these plans perfectly feasible. I was in the process of meticulously planning with local businesses and council members using state grants to ensure the success of these plans. Of course, Mayor Peterson should have been aware of these discussions, but he probably never imagined that the man he was disparaging as a high school graduate was the same person involved in these projects. I haven't accomplished anything significant yet, so I'm not in a position to boast. However, without cooperation between the government and businesses, these projects cannot succeed. Mayor Peterson's behavior could well be said to undermine that foundation. Perhaps realizing this, Mayor Peterson seemed absent-minded throughout the reception, but after it ended, he was the first to approach me without even saying goodbye to the attendees.
Man, Mark is really an upstanding person. I hope you'll continue to help develop our town.
Confused by Mayor Peterson's changed attitude, Mary cut into the conversation from the side.
Dad, let's say goodbye to the people leaving the venue first. And there are other things you should be saying, aren't there?
Mary's words carried a hint of anger, and Mayor Peterson fell silent afterward. Once the goodbyes were finished, and we had thanked the venue staff, Mayor Peterson approached me again.
Mark, I see great potential in you and have a proposal regarding the upcoming projects. I think there might be some room to cut the budget.
What he started talking about, It seemed Mayor Peterson was considering asking me to adjust the town's expenditures. Of course, it's not something I can decide on my own, but sparing investments at this stage would mean no development for the town. We are all working together to somehow rebuild our town faced with difficulties. Frankly, it's troubling to be treated like this by someone in the mayor's position. With all due respect, let's have this kind of discussion in the appropriate place. I don't want things to get unnecessarily complicated. I wanted to end the conversation, but Mayor Peterson was not backing down easily.
Even so, there's an election coming up, and political issues are involved. I want to improve the town's financial situation and leave a legacy for the next election.
His self-centered way of speaking left me speechless. As I was pondering what to do, Mary hurried over.
I heard everything. It's rude to suddenly change your tune and start negotiating like this. First, you should apologize for the disrespect shown so far.
Mayor Peterson shrunk as if he was being scolded by a teacher.
Come on.
Prompted by Mary, Mayor Peterson faced me.
I'm sorry.
Your voice is too quiet, and those words aren't going to be enough for forgiveness.
It was almost like a real teacher-student interaction. I looked around and was relieved to see that I was the only one witnessing this scene. If someone else had seen it, the mayor's dignity would be completely undermined. It's okay. I'm not taking it too seriously, and after all, I haven't achieved anything yet, so let's work together from here on. When I said that, Mayor Peterson seemed relieved. Mary didn't seem completely convinced, but since I said it was fine, she decided not to say anything further. Mary apologized to me and then left. A few days after the wedding, I was sitting across from Mayor Peterson at the old restaurant.
I wanted to apologize formally today and took the time. Please forgive my many rudenesses.
It seems that even after that incident, Mary had insisted he apologize properly, and Mayor Peterson was earnestly apologizing to me. When I had arranged today's meeting, I had said, I'm not worried about it, it's okay, but Mayor Peterson insisted on meeting directly to apologize. If he insists that much, then so be it, but today's meeting had no mention of budgets or anything concerning, and it was clear that Mayor Peterson genuinely wanted to apologize. Thinking that from now on he'll deal with me as an individual beyond educational background makes me feel somewhat relieved. A few months have passed. The project planning is progressing steadily, but the president calls me frequently to ask about progress. The president doesn't mean to pressure me, but this business will not only decide the future fate of our town, but also have a significant impact on our company's performance and future management. Honestly, I want to avoid any scenario where the project is handed over to another company or downsized. Understanding the president's concerns, I feel nearly crushed by the pressure. But I have no choice but to do it. Finally, the planning has reached the stage of finalizing the master plan, and today is an important meeting to decide its direction. I straightened my collar and headed to the venue where the meeting would take place. The meeting seemed to go smoothly until a problematic situation arose. To develop the town, the land needs to be cleared first, but the landowner is adamantly refusing to sell. Despite offering more than enough for the purchase, and carefully explaining that we want to develop new projects for the future of the town, the response was firm. No matter what is said, I have no intention of giving up the land. Faced with a project that seems about to falter at an unexpected point, The meeting was enveloped in a heavy silence. Then, one of the council members participating in the meeting raised his hand and called out to everyone.
Shouldn't we just stop this? It was unreasonable from the start. The residents who have lived here for ages don't want a new tourist spot or a novel energy facility.
His statement made the atmosphere in the meeting room even heavier and tenser. Executives from other companies were also participating, and it was clear they were displeased. However, the land issue was indeed something that couldn't be argued with. A council member, originally skeptical about the development, clearly wanted to scrap the plans. In reality, if this issue cannot be resolved, it may indeed have to be abandoned. But it's undeniable that this project must be pushed forward, considering not only corporate profits but also the town's welfare. Breaking the silence was Mayor Peterson.
Let me handle this. It might not be resolved immediately, but we have to take time and talk it out. This project is necessary for the future of this town.
While the corporate side was momentarily relieved, the council member who had spoken earlier reacted grumpily.
What's the matter? Mayor Peterson, weren't you originally agreeing with me? Don't tell me you've flipped sides because of a bribe.
That's unthinkable. Unfazed by the council member's outrageous remark, Mayor Peterson responded calmly.
I won't bend my views if it's for the good of this town, and I might change them if needed. When considering what really benefits the future of our town, now is the time for the citizens to unite and tackle new initiatives.
Moved by Mayor Peterson's impassioned words, the council member could only remain silent. While the issue was not resolved, everyone confirmed the direction to change the town together, and we moved on to finalizing the master plan. Despite Mayor Peterson's efforts, I heard that the land issue remains unresolved. If this continues, the plan might be significantly delayed or scrapped altogether. Just as these worries began to spread, I was called in by the president. Had it all fallen through? That was my fear, but I was overjoyed when I heard the president's report.
The start date for the project has been decided.
It seems Mayor Peterson's fervent persuasion had an impact, and he successfully got agreement for the town to manage the land. There have been various hardships, but it finally seems like our efforts will bear fruit. The real challenge starts now. Let's create a town we can be proud of. I renewed my resolve with that in mind. 3 years have passed since then, and the development of the town is progressing smoothly. Completion is still a way off, but it's already taking shape, and I'm starting to look forward to what comes next. On a busy day at work, I received great news from Dave. A baby boy was born in Dave's family. When I arrived at Dave's house with a gift, Mayor Peterson was there, soothing the baby.
Let Mark hold him too, Dad.
Yes, but can you wait just a bit longer?
Watching Mayor Peterson tenderly soothe his grandson, I couldn't help but smile. The house had more than enough toys and necessities for child rearing, most of which Mayor Peterson had apparently bought.
For this child's sake, we need to make this a vibrant town.
Mayor Peterson muttered to no one in particular. Though generations change, this town will continue to exist. Thinking of these children and their prosperous lives, I decided to contribute to our hometown alongside Mayor Peterson.